we are able to in a hybrid format. You're welcome to either attend in Town Hall chambers or via Zoom. If you're using Zoom, you'll go to the Zoom application and enter the meeting number 873-2693-9541. You can also dial in through the phone number 929-205-6099. And again, using the same meeting number, 873-2693-9541. Just before starting with our official business, want to make a quick plug for anyone who is on that during this year's Conservation Commission meetings, we will also be featuring ongoing discussions in advance or in connection with the town's 2023 Open Space and Recreation Plan process. Those meetings will start at 6 p.m. on our regularly scheduled Thursday meeting nights, so every other Thursday. Those are open to the public. The public is welcome to attend. Those will also be recorded, and anyone who isn't able to attend but would like to listen in is welcome to do so. Had a great discussion earlier tonight with Ryan Jetty of the Franklin Rec Department, and looking forward to hearing more input from the various stakeholders as we go through the open space process. So just a plug to please attend, participate, and you'll hear more about that through the year. Just before we start, want to just take a quick roll of the commission, both whoever we have in chambers tonight and then on Zoom. Can we start in chambers with you, Jeff?
Jeff Bell, present, sir.
Meg Hagan, present.
Michael Ryan, present.
Mark LePage, present.
Right. And on Zoom, Richard?
Richard Johnson's present and accounted for.
Excellent. And I'm Pat Gallagher. Normally, we start off our meetings with public hearings. Tonight, due to a scheduling item and conflicting hearings, we're actually going to start with a permit modification for Franklin Ford. And then we'll get into our public hearings after that. So I think, Rick, you're on for the applicant here.
Hi, yes, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for taking me, as I do have a conflict with another Conservation Commission in an abutting town. So I do appreciate you accommodating my request.
Of course. Can you walk us through the requested modification?
Sure. So we had come before the Conservation Commission over the summer of 2022, and we were working concurrently with the Planning Board for site plan approval. The Conservation Commission had closed the public hearing and issued the order of conditions. We believed that we were near completion with the review comments. However, Beta had come up with some additional comments that necessitated some changes. And what we've done is put together a cover letter outlining the 5 changes that were made, along with the latest set of plans that was approved and endorsed by the Planning Board. Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, I could walk you through those 5 items that we had outlined.
That would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure. So originally, the underground infiltration basin located on the easterly portion of the site had an outlet that exited the pond and headed towards the east into a swale area. It was requested that we relocate that outlet to the northwest, which is where it's currently shown. That necessitated changing of the flat end section to a head wall, as well as the rip-wrap energy dissipator at the pipe end. So those changes are reflected on this latest site plan. Additionally, some grading changes were suggested along the parking lot area and the relocation of catch basin 5 to the corner of the parking area. We're also reflected on this plan that you have. And we also added the building addition roof to the underground infiltration system, where we had previously had it exiting the rear of the parking area and through a swale into the wetland resource area. And to accommodate that and some other requests, which included the modeling of the infiltration basin utilizing the NOAA Atlas 14, we increased the size of the underground infiltration pond. Although that is not within the jurisdictional area, it certainly has a connection as the pipe outlet is within the jurisdictional area. So we felt that that was appropriate to point that out as well. And then the last item was the changes necessitated some differences in the 25 to 50 foot buffer zone alteration, as well as the 50 to 100 foot buffer zone alteration. The 25 to 50 was actually increased about 450 square feet, and that was for the pipe installation, the head wall, and the riprap. That area is predominantly located within an existing gravel area that Franklin Ford currently uses for overflow parking of vehicles and storage. And there is a reduction in the 100-foot buffer zone alteration disturbance that's being proposed. So those are basically the highlights of the changes that were made to, as I say, satisfy Beta and obtain the permits from the planning board, and we wanted to come back and just get the blessing of the Conservation Commission. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Rick. Brika, just before getting to the commission, did you have any comments and you know, on the updated plans and changes?
I don't have any comments. I just wanted, I did the math earlier this afternoon, and based on what was previously approved with the commission to now, it's only a positive 197 square foot change. And it is for stormwater engineering, which is generally a good thing. So my recommendation is to not have them refile, just consider it a site plan change, amend the impact numbers on the permit that you've already previously signed and resubmit, with no change in order of the previously approved order of conditions.
Great, thank you, Brika. Wanted to see if any of the commissioners have comments. Want to start with in chambers, if anyone in chambers has a question or a comment on this.
No comments.
Okay. Richard, any questions or
Nope.
comments for you?
No comments, looks good to me.
Right, I agree. I think the approach that Brika proposed makes sense. I don't think there's a need to refile, and we can substitute the plans that had been approved with these updated plans. Jeff, can you make a motion to approve the modification as requested and as outlined by Brika?
This is Jeff Milne. Give you a proposal to approve the modifications and extensions to the Franklin Ford permit.
Meg Hagan, I second.
Great, thank you. Mark, how do you vote?
Aye.
Michael?
Approve.
Jeff?
Approve.
Meg?
Approve.
And Richard?
Approve.
And Pat Gallagher, I vote to approve as well. Thanks very much, Rick.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Commission members. Have a good evening.
You too.
Me too.
Two.
So we're going to go back now, and for anyone who had just joined us, we were just going a bit out of order, but are going to go back and start off with our public hearing calendar for tonight. The first that we have is for 74th South Street, which is a continuation of a notice of intent filing. Brika, my understanding is they've requested a continuance.
Yes, that is correct.
Right. This is a public hearing. If any members of the public, either in chambers or on Zoom, would like to comment or have any questions, you're welcome to do so at this point.
No one?
Okay. Hearing none, I think we will, Mark, can I have a motion to continue this to, is the 26th our next
Yeah, motion to continue NOI on 74 South Street.
Michael Ryan, second.
Do we have a date and time?
January 26th, 7:01.
Jeff, how do you vote?
Vote to continue.
Okay, Meg,
Vote to continue.
Mark,
Vote to continue.
Michael,
Continue.
Richard,
Vote to continue.
and Pat Gallagher, I vote to continue as well. So 74th South Street has been continued to January 26th. Next up, we have a continued notice of intent for 0 Lincoln Street. This is Franklin Heights Parcel B. Brika, I understand that the applicant here has also requested a continuance.
That is correct, they have.
Okay. Again, we'll be continuing this, but if any members of the public have any questions or comments, you're welcome to state those now. Anything in chambers?
No.
Great. Richard, can I have a motion to continue this to the 26th?
Yes, I give you a motion to continue the NOI for 0 Lincoln Street, Franklin Heights, parcel B.
Meg Hagan, I
Mark,
second.
can I get Meg, thank you. Mark, how do you vote?
Mark, vote to continue.
Okay. Michael?
Continue.
Jeff?
Vote to continue.
Meg?
Vote to continue.
Richard?
Vote to continue.
And I vote to continue as well. So 0 Lincoln Street, Franklin Heights, parcel B is continued to January 26th at 7:02 p.m. Next up, we have an NOI for 803 Washington Street. Again, my understanding, Brika, is that the applicant has requested a continuance here.
Yes, except they have requested a continuance to our February 9th hearing.
Okay. Any issues with that? Questions, comments?
Nope.
And again, this is a public hearing, so if any members of the public have any questions or comments, now is the time.
Nothing in chambers, Pat.
Great, thanks. Meg, can I have a motion to continue this to February 9th?
Yeah. Motion to continue 803 Washington Street to February 9th at 7:01 p.m.
Michael
We're
Ryan,
7:00.
second.
Or up to 7?
Well, that's
Thanks,
the
Mike.
next meeting though, right? So would we be?
Yeah, February
Oh,
9th.
that's a
Yeah,
good
February
point.
9th.
That's a good point.
Gotcha.
Jeff, how do you vote?
Jeff Milne votes to continue.
Thanks, Jeff. Meg, how do you vote?
I vote to continue.
Mark?
Vote to continue.
Michael?
Continue.
Richard?
Vote to continue.
And Pat Gallagher, I vote to continue. So 803 Washington Street has been continued to February 9th at 7:01 p.m. Next up, we have a continued NOI for Bench Street, Lot 1. Is the applicant or their representative with us?
Yes, Stephen Bosvich, Land Planning, Inc., representing the property owner, Stephen Kelleher.
Okay. How are you, Steve?
Good, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Did you want me to go over the plan, since we last met?
Yeah, it would be helpful if there are any updates since we last spoke to just get a summary of those.
Okay, so last time we spoke, I submitted a revised set of plans per, comments made by Beta's review. Those comments were addressed and were not able to be reviewed by the board and the review engineer. So we continued the meeting. There have been since then no additional updates to this plan. The proposal is to construct a single-family residence and on-site septic system with a paved driveway. We haven't changed anything. I believe they made some additional comments regarding the rain garden. We provided some additional documentation regarding the typical detail of the rain garden, as well as a operation and maintenance for the infiltration system. Those are the only changes made so far. I could field any questions if there are any additional.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Rika, do you have any comments or questions, or is Jonathan with us tonight?
Jonathan is not, but I do have his comments, or Beta's comments anyways, about the rain garden. So reading right off my agent report, since the last hearing, the applicant submitted additional information in response to the agent and Beta, as previously mentioned. As a reminder, since this is a single-family home, the applicant is under no obligation to provide stormwater management under state or local regulations. However, the applicant has provided designs for an on-site rain garden and roof infiltration system to meet stormwater standards to the best extent practicable. This is in good faith considering the amount of public comments we've had. So Beta did review the designs, and their comments are as follows. The applicant should provide at least 2 feet of separation in the rain garden design to the estimated seasonal high groundwater table. If this can't be achieved, the designer should consider providing an impermeable liner and under drain if grades allow, to allow the rain garden to function as a filtering bioretention area. In conjunction with the comment above, the installation of an under drain should be considered, if grades allow, to ensure that the rain garden doesn't retain water for 72 hours or longer. At a minimum, the engineer of record should observe soils during construction to confirm final design criteria. The O&M plan should include provisions to address water that stands for 72 hours or longer in the rain garden. Again, they're under no obligation for stormwater management systems, but these comments are best practices to ensure that the rain garden is viable and a functioning BMP.
The
for future
suggestions.
Yes, they are suggestions, yep. So I guess I would open it up for a discussion and a volley for the applicant based on these comments. If they have since addressed Beta's comments, if we could put something on the record. Aside from the rain garden comments, the applicant has submitted adequate information for the project to be conditioned by the Conservation Commission. So I would still recommend approval, but I am curious about the rain garden design.
So as far as the rain garden, we were just trying to generally show an area that could be proposed a rain garden. We were not contracted with the owner to design stormwater management facilities. We showed, as you stated in good faith, some infiltration for the roof. As far as the infiltration, if you could condition that we provide calculations that show we can infiltrate the first inch of runoff from the roof, we'd be happy to do that. As far as the rain garden, if we could condition that as well to do some further on-site exploration. The only soil tests taken were actually outside of this company and were performed by another soil evaluator. It's shown on the plan for the septic system, so we actually do not have any data as to the location and depth of the horizons where we are proposing that. As you stated, if we determine throughout the process of construction that it is not a viable location, we still stand behind the grass filter strip immediately adjacent to the driveway as filtration for the driveway. So if it's determined throughout construction to be not viable, we can pivot, remove the rain garden, and just seed and put lawn per the specs on sheet 2 to provide a filter strip.
So, rewinding back here, so the rain garden is not, it is something that land planning is suggesting, but something that the current builder and owner of the property isn't on board with yet?
It's basically a means to filter out any runoff from the driveway.
Right, I
If-
guess, sorry, not to
Yeah.
interrupt, but I guess I'm wondering, I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, that this was just an option, so nothing is set in stone, no pun intended, to create this rain garden.
Correct, correct.
Okay. Okay, well, there's that. And then, my additional follow-up comment, you mentioned a grass filter strip to mitigate runoff and infiltration, and I would amend your seed mixture, because traditional lawn grass is, to put it quite frankly, awful for infiltration. And their roots don't go deep enough, so I think the homeowner, if there is significant runoff from their driveway, they'll actually end up with a bare patch of dead vegetation because it can't handle any significant runoff from that impervious surface. So I guess now I'm curious if you will be moving forward with the rain garden or doing the filter strip, and if it's the filter strip, if we can amend that seed mixture. If not,
So the,
I think it's something you might need to go back and talk to your client with.
So these seed mixture as proposed in the erosion control notes, you're saying that is, quote, the typical planting and is not adequate for a filter strip? Is that?
No, I'm going off of your turf lawn comment.
Oh,
So your Kentucky
so-
bluegrass, your fescue, your rye, that's typically not up to
So
par.
I'm not really vegetation, so I may have misspoke. Currently, we're proposing a 20% in, I'm reading this off of note 6, sediment and erosion control notes, sheet 2.
Yep,
We are proposing a 20% red top, 60% chewing fescue, and 20% Kentucky bluegrass. Recommended hydro seed with high fiber content. So that is the particular spec for what we will be planting. As far as the viability with the filter strip, I don't know if that is sufficient.
sure. Okay, well, those are my comments. I'll leave it up to the commission if you want. Again, since this is a single-family home and for all intents and purposes, they're exempt from stormwater management. If you want to move forward with this, condition that I stay in, communication with the applicant for finalized plans for stormwater, and then liaison that back to you, what have you. I open up to your discussion.
So, Parika, I'm a little confused. We heard testimony in the last meeting from a neighbor that there's a lot of water runoff towards their property. Are any of the things that you're talking about here going to remediate that problem?
Yes, both options, whether it is a sufficiently planted filter strip or a rain garden, if designed correctly, can help mitigate that, but the applicant is under no obligation to do it. So now there's another layer that we have something in front of us that is proposed, but it's also not proposed because it's not from the applicant, or there's nothing set in stone where the applicant is saying, I will design this rain garden and I will install it. So at this
is there
point, it's
anything that we can do to
ideas.
put teeth behind these proposals?
You can request the applicant to do it, but again, they're under no obligation to. They're exempt because it's a single-family home from runoff. And from previous discussions as well, that runoff issue at Bent Street is also a part of a much larger complex of infrastructure. So,
So maybe a question for the applicant. I mean, it seemed like you were open to recommending a spot for the rain garden, but would you be open to putting the rain garden in as part of this? Would you be willing to do that? I'm just asking.
Was that a question directed towards me?
Yes, please. Yeah, realize you're not obligated, but asking if you would.
So I can speak with the homeowner. As Brika mentioned, this is kind of just a viability kind of. We could propose it there. It's we're kind of leaving it up to the homeowner whether he wants to do that. Either way, we're kind of providing a filtration system for the driveway. I personally like seeing different plants and vegetation in my stormwater management system. However, some clients may not feel that way, but we can further discuss that with the homeowner as to whether he would like a full design on that, or if he would prefer just minimizing really the tree line. So we probably shift that tree line if we wanted to go with a updated set of plans and just provide the filter strip. So I would discuss that with the homeowner moving forward to coordinate with you with which route he wants to go.
Rika, should we defer a vote until we get some answers here with the homeowners' intentions are gonna be?
I think maintaining status quo and how the commission has previously voted and I've recommended, personally, I like to see concrete plans in front of me. Whichever way it falls, I like to know what the plan is, and that also lends a sense of security and enforcement if something were to go wrong. Which doesn't usually
Aren't
occur,
we-
but sometimes.
Aren't we going to recommend or demand they do something that they don't have to do?
Well, so that is the caveat to that, Richard, yes, and I will also default to your chair to answer that question a little bit better than I, but you are right, there is no requirement for the rain garden. However, I would advocate that since this was submitted as a part of an open hearing permit application, and my understanding was that this was actually being installed, I would like something finalized or documented stating we are doing it or we're not. Pat,
Yeah, so I also want to hear if there, because I know this has been something that, the abutters and others in the neighborhood have had an interest in. So I want to see if there are any comments from folks who are in chambers or on Zoom. I just to echo Richard's point, we cannot require the applicant to do this. I think we need to go in saying we can't require the applicant to do this. I personally don't have an issue with if we were to say, the applicant is going to use good faith efforts, once, for example, once you price this out to say, if it is, if it's feasible for them to do it, they're going to do it, knowing that we cannot require it to be done. I personally would like a little bit more certainty as to, whether just before we close the hearing and vote on this, how likely is it that it might be a viable approach for the owner. So that would be my preference if the applicant's amenable to a continuance to get a little bit more information, because it feels like, it feels like we just need a little bit more input on, is this a realistic possibility or not? If not, for our own benefit as a commission, just so that the public can understand that a little bit more. Just before, any response, want to see if there's any members of the public tonight who have questions or comments on this.
So, I can.
they do.
Yeah, we've got somebody.
Repetition is good. Just please sign in.
Back again. Hi, everybody. Happy New Year. The only question I have is,
Sorry, could you state your name? And
sure,
address for
my
the
name
record?
is Romuald Zlotnick, 95 Bent Street. I go by Romy. I'm a butter on the same side of the road down the street from where this house is supposed to go in. And I see he's got this plan, but they don't have to put it in. And I can see if they don't put it in, what's going to happen. Eventually, all that water on the pitch of the land is going to head right down to where that water's standing, and it's going to increase it, and it's just going to inundate everybody in the area. This has been going on. I've been in this house for over 35 years. And it's like they put a development across the street that never perked, and then sewer came up, and everybody built there. They put the state facility behind us. We missed the meeting on that because it was supposed to be downstairs. It was moved upstairs, and the door was open, so we never got to see the change, so we missed that, and it was approved. And now there's water everywhere. The electric meter at the street floods. The town had to come down and dig out where it was flooding out to the street. And it's just another thing. It's like one thing after another, and we're the ones that end up with all the water. So, you know, I know that he wants to build a house, but comes a time when is enough is enough. You know, I realize he bought all this land, and, you know, I have to say one thing. When he first bought the land, I asked him if he wanted to buy my house, and he told me directly, he says, I'm not into real estate. Well, I guess he is now. So, that's my beef. It's just, we get inundated with so much water, and they keep building, and the water's gotta go somewhere, you know, so, and not to mention the wildlife in the area. It just keeps pushing them and pushing them and pushing them. They got nowhere to go. I had a family of fisher cats living under my shed this year. So, you know, it's just a matter of, I know progress is progress, believe me, but, I mean, sorry. Said I say my piece.
Apologize. No, thank you.
No, thank you for, you know, and we certainly appreciate and hear your concerns. You know, I think this is something that Brika has had conversations with Mike Maglio, the town engineer, over, you know, because it seems to me like, you know, and I understand what you're saying, that, you know, this would potentially have downstream effects on your property. But it seems to be the type of thing that also needs to be looked at from a town infrastructure standpoint. And is there anything, if this is a particularly problematic area, is there anything that needs to be done from a public infrastructure standpoint? Brika, I don't know if Mike has had a chance to look into this any further. If not, it might be something just, you know, to put on his list, to take a look at it and see if there are any options for expanding capacity or, you know, something that would help alleviate the water issues in that area.
Yeah, Mike and I connected on it last week, and Derek and I actually went out about a half day and we're tracing some of the infrastructure, and then even back on to Fairmont's property, since that abuts right back there. So I'm actually, Derek and I plan on going back tomorrow, so that's fine. I can keep pushing.
I have a question. Does the owner have any, you know, Beta made these comments and these recommendations. Is the owner aware of this recommendation about this rain garden design and putting this stuff in?
Yes.
Does he?
Yep, I forward on all of the, I liaise on that, I project manage it. So Beta sends something to me and I send it back to the applicant. So they do have these comments, and to pair it off, what I've also stated in previous hearings, because stormwater is not required for single-family homes, this is where it's good for you, again, to reach out to the developer, and that's how these in good faith BMPs are created. So Richard, they do have it. I think it would make the commission, abutters, and myself overseeing the conditions a little bit, it would make us feel a little bit better to have something just laid out in plain language a little bit better, more.
They haven't commented on it though, whether they were going to do it or they told us to go, you know.
No, Richard, I haven't received comments back on Beta's latest comments, not to be redundant, but at the same time, I was also hoping that maybe at this hearing we would receive that.
It looks to me like we can't force them to do this, we could possibly just say, we would highly recommend that we'd approve this, we highly recommend that you do what Beta suggested, et cetera, et cetera.
And I think that's what our decision is ultimately going to look like. I think for my part, I'd appreciate just hearing a little bit more, because it seems, Stephen, like, right now this is maybe in the realm of possibility, but that there hasn't been a conversation on, is it actually likely to, either the rain garden or, the filter strip or, any of the other kind of alternatives. It would just be helpful to get some feedback on, is this a likely scenario? Or, is it not a likely scenario?
Rika, you mentioned that you didn't think that the original the filter strip, that the grass would be a very good alternative to it. Is there some kind of plantings in a filter strip that you would be happy with?
That's a loaded question there, Richard.
Yeah, okay.
Typical best practices are planting of conservation wildlife mix. New England Plants has a lot of native seed mixtures. Your Kentucky bluegrass is not from here, Kentucky bluegrass. Same thing with fescue, and rye typically comes from the West Coast. So for something here that can handle New England storms, that can infiltrate in New England soils to the best extent practicable, you want New England plants. So that is something that I can absolutely guide and advise and help the applicant in picking. So for the next hearing, there's something there. But again, Richard, they're not required to do it. So for all intents and purposes, they could do turf lawn and call it a day.
Sure. Well, we're here to recommend best
That
practices.
is exactly right.
Well, wouldn't hurt us to do that.
Stephen, would you be amenable to us continuing this until the 26th?
26th, yes, this month. Yeah, I could do that, and I could speak with the property owner about, locking in whether or not he wants to go rain garden or not. Based off of the Beta comments, they're talking about groundwater offsets and designing barriers, and the only way to do that would be to get out there and dig holes. So I have to see if that's something he wants to pursue, or if he's feeling that he would prefer to just go move the tree line a little bit closer to the driveway filter strip. I'll discuss that with him, and I will have those answers by the next meeting. Additionally, I will contact Rika about better choices for seed mixing for that filter strip. And I believe that was kind of the bulk of what your major concerns were, topics you wanted addressed.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Stephen. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Michael, can I have a motion to continue this until January 26th?
Yes, I move that we continue the Bent Street Lot 1 NOI till January 26th, 7:03.
Meg Hagan, I second.
7:04, sorry.
Sorry.
Or,
Meg Hagan, I second at 7:04.
Jeff, how do you vote?
I vote
Okay.
to continue.
Okay. Meg?
Meg, I vote to continue.
Okay. Mark?
I vote to continue as well.
Michael?
Continue?
Richard?
I vote to continue.
And I vote to continue as well. So we'll see you on the 26th. Thanks, Steve.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you for your
Steve.
time,
Thanks,
everybody.
Thank you.
You bet.
Next up, we have the continued ANRAD for 121 Grove Street. Jeff, I actually need to recuse for this, just by way of explanation. There was a new conflict that came up on my part, and so I will be recusing for the remainder of this item. So, Jeff, floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. So, opening the hearing on the NRAD for 121 Grove Street. Do we have a representative on the phone?
No, the applicant has requested a continuance as they're still waiting to respond to Beta's latest letter.
Okay. Do you have any comments yourself that you want to make on?
I have not reviewed Beta's recent letter. It was submitted last Friday. Since we last met with them early December to now, I have gone out with the applicant and Beta to conduct a field visit, and Beta's comments generally reflect my initial comments that I had when they were first in front of you. But again, I haven't read through it yet. So I will do that before the next hearing, and then hopefully the applicant will also have had sufficient time to respond.
Doing the commissions, everything you want to?
I'm sorry, yeah. Is this where Beta was gonna go out and do soil tests, right? Because we were trying to determine the wetland delineation and we were originally looking at the
Yes,
plan.
so the applicant went out and did a delineation. I went out and reviewed that delineation,
Yeah.
albeit very briefly. I spent a couple hours out there. They
Yeah.
spent 2 days. Reviewed the delineation, had comments about the size and the identified resources. Beta did go out on their own for a day, then invited me to review with them, and then invited the applicant to review with both of us. And Beta and I and their wetland team were on the same page, more or less. Again,
Okay.
I haven't read their full report, so I
Sure,
don't want to
sure,
speak out
yeah.
loud. But for the most part, we reflect the same findings.
That's good. Okay. Just curious, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Good thoughts?
Nothing for me at this time, thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Anybody online or present wish to comment on 121 Grove Street? Does not appear that we have any, so can I take a motion to continue this on the, what was the date? 26th, 7:05?
Michael
Motion to-
Ryan, I move to continue the ANRAD for 121 Grove Street to 7:05 PM on 26 January.
Second that?
Very good, thank you. Richard, how do you vote?
Vote to continue.
Meg?
Meg Hagan, I vote to continue.
Jeff Milne votes to continue.
Michael Ryan, vote to continue.
Mark LePage, vote to continue.
Very good, so we'll continue this on the 26th.
We keep continuing. We're gonna have a hell of a meeting one of these days.
I know it. Is Pat out there?
He's back.
So, Richard, I have good news. I have good news for you because I think we're continuing the next one as well.
Jeez.
So this is a public hearing on a notice of intent for 30 Uncas Brook Row. This is, I believe, the first hearing for this, so we'll formally open the public hearing. Although, Greek, I understand that the plan is to continue this.
Yes.
Any questions, comments from the commission? Granted, we have not heard anything on this yet, but if anyone has any questions, now is the time. And likewise, if any members of the public have any questions, now would be the time. Right, hearing none. Richard, can I have a motion to continue this to the 26th?
Yes, I give you a motion to continue the NOI for 30 Uncas Brook Row until the 26th. That would be 7:06.
7:06.
Jeff Milne continues, seconds that.
Great, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Richard. Mark, how do you vote?
Vote to continue.
Michael?
Continue.
Jeff?
Vote to continue.
Meg?
Vote to continue.
Richard?
To continue.
And I vote to continue as well. So 30 Uncas Brook Row, continued to January 26th. That concludes our public hearings for tonight. Moving on to our general business items, and starting there with minor buffer zone activity applications. The first up we have is for 6 Georgia Drive. Is the applicant or their representative on?
Representing my client Heather Conway and Joseph DeLuzio. My name is Kevin Baldwin with Ethical Tree Services.
Hey, Kevin. Can you just give us a quick description of what is being requested?
Yes, they have 4 box elder maples close to the edge of their house, and they are having a bad box elder bug infestation. And discussing with Agent Rika, we agreed that any amount of pruning to solve the problem would result in aggressive, uncontrolled growth from the tree afterwards, and eventually posing a risk to the property. So the best result would be to remove the trees to ground level during the winter to avoid disturbance, and not remove the stumps.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. Brika, any concerns or issues?
No concerns. I recommend approval, although I would like to note that this is within the 25 foot. It is up gradient. You can actually, where's my thing here? Okay. You can kind of see these trees are on this upland finger, if you will, with BBW behind. You can kind of see some ponding here, I think. Same thing over here. So it definitely is within the no touch, but generally the commission does approve tree removals down to the stump.
Okay. So is it an issue of just how they're accessing it and making sure that they're not going in?
Yes, they're not blazing a trail through the wetland. Yeah, included in their permit, they will be mobilizing through the existing lawn with mats during winter to avoid soil compaction. And they will be hauling out the same way they went in. So.
Okay. Any members of the commission have any comments or questions?
I had one question. Can you just confirm there's no other way to treat this infestation besides the pruning that would lead to dangerous tree growth?
If we were to treat the trees with a foliar spray, we'll treat really the box elder bugs. Non-selective herbicides would cause more damage than removal of the 4 box elder maples, especially because there are existing box elder maples deeper in the conservation space. So really, you're not going to be able to completely mitigate the box elder bug problem, but at least the height right over the roof would be solved because they're descending from the trees.
Thank you.
And I'm against foliar sprays as much as possible.
Thanks.
So just curious, if you do remove these trees, does that typically stop the bug and the infestation, or are they still going to be there?
They will still have to treat the residence itself, but at least the insects would be further away from the house. The closest box elder maple from there is probably another 100 feet, maybe 125 feet from the property. So at least at that point, they would be deeper in the open space.
Okay, thanks.
Any further comments or questions from the commission?
None for me.
None
No,
for me, thank you.
No, thank you.
None for me.
Okay. Jeff, can I have a motion to approve the MBZA?
Sure. Mr. Chairman, I give you a motion to approve the MBZA for 6 Georgia Drive.
Meg Hagan, I second.
Great. Mark, how do you vote?
Vote to approve?
Michael?
Approved?
Jeff?
Approve.
Meg?
Vote to approve.
Richard?
Vote to approve.
And I vote to approve as well. Thanks very much, Kevin. So if you could just coordinate with Brika on, access and all of that stuff, that would be great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Next up, we have an MBZA for 727 Lincoln Street. Is the owner or their representative on with us?
Doesn't sound like it.
Rika, I know this is for a ratification. Can you just summarize what they needed done here and
Yeah, so the property owner approached me, they actually had some hazardous trees, which their tree company deemed as hazardous. That's typically the best practice. I am not, I took dendrology, but I am not a registered forester or arborist, so I stay in my lane. And so I went out and I conducted a site visit. There's actually an intermittent stream right here that you can see penciled in on this base map. And there's a culvert right here. And that culvert takes all the water from Daniel Street, Elm Street, and conveys it into this intermittent stream, which connects to this wetland over here. There is a significant stream channel here. There's flowing water. So under our local bylaw, it is a jurisdictional intermittent stream, even though it's not mapped. As such, it's allotted a 100-foot buffer zone, which is predominantly his entire property. So I went out, looked at the trees that he wanted to remove. One of them is over here. It's a dead snag. That's fine. It's right at that limit of the 100-foot buffer zone. Again, not again, but in existing lawn, same story that is prevalent in all the other ones. Oh, you can see the stream, another stream connection back here too. There are 2 trees right here in this landscaped area that he also needed removed. Here you go. You can see their crowns right here. And then, most importantly, is there's trees right here surrounding this culvert. And this is right at the top of slope with the root masses holding the bank in place. So I gave administrative approval considering it was hazardous, and they was dropping everything right on their vehicles. They were having to park in different locations and damaging personal property. I did, though, stress and have since conducted a site visit since they removed the trees that the stumps need to be left in place. And I know that is common practice, but especially right here is with the channel having significant undercutting and erosion from all of that runoff, those trees needed to stay there to stabilize that bank. Otherwise, you would have collapse. So again, I gave emergency administrative approval, and I'm just seeking ratification. But I wanted to let you know specifically about this area.
Okay, that's helpful background. Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments?
None for me.
None for me, thank you.
None for me.
No, thanks.
Great. I don't have any questions. I think that all sounds like the right course of action. Meg, can I have a motion to approve or to ratify the MBZA approval?
Yeah, motion to ratify the MBZA approval for 272 Lincoln Street.
Second that.
Great. Michael, how do you vote?
Vote to ratify?
Jeff?
We vote to approve.
Meg?
And I vote to ratify, yeah.
Mark?
Vote to ratify.
Richard?
Vote to approve.
And I vote to approve as well. Thanks, Brika.
Yep.
Next up, so we covered Franklin Ford, so we're going to move on to certificates of compliance, and we have one for 381 Prospect Street.
Yep. The applicant
Sounds like
actually, they requested to continue to January 26th.
Okay. Mark, can I have a motion to continue the COC for 381 Prospect Street?
Yeah, move to continue the certificate of compliance for 381 Prospect Street to January 26th. I think we're at 7:07.
Doesn't need a time, it's not a public hearing, but I appreciate
look at
the
that.
dedication.
Overachieving.
Yes, that's good. That's good, you pay attention. Thank you, that's good.
Michael Ryan, second.
We'll cater dinner on the 26th. Jeff, how do you vote?
Vote to approve.
Meg?
I vote to approve.
Mark?
Vote to approve.
Michael?
Vote to approve.
Richard?
Vote to approve.
And I vote to approve as well. So 381 Prospect is continued until the 26th. Next up, we have violations, and there are two to cover. The first is an update on 305 Union Street. This is for Mark, you might be new to this one. This has been ongoing since, I think, last April or May. Brika, can you summarize the update from the consultant on this one?
Yeah, I think this one's a good update. So verbatim, since I have been reading all the updates, I've been in contact with the asbestos designer who plans to have a draft plan available for internal review to Margaret, the property owner's team, next week. His goal is still to have a plan ready for submittal to Mass DEP before the end of January. You'll be given a copy of this plan when it is submitted. The plan is a non-traditional asbestos work plan to remove the asbestos with a licensed asbestos designer per protocol. So I recommend extending the enforcement order for another 30 days.
Any questions before we vote to extend this? We'll give them a participation trophy when they finally.
What can you say?
Richard, can I have a motion to
Yeah.
extend the enforcement order for 30 days?
I'd like to make a motion to extend the enforcement order for 305 Union Street for another 30 days.
I'll second that.
Great. Mark, how do you vote?
Vote to approve.
Michael?
Approve the extension.
Jeff?
Approve the extension.
Meg?
Vote to approve the extension.
Richard?
Vote to approve.
And I vote to approve as well. So the enforcement order for 305 Union is extended to February 11th.
Yeah, 9th is our next hearing.
Oh,
Yeah, but yes.
Maybe we'll make it to an anniversary date, a whole year.
It was the first week I started, Richard.
Set a record.
Next up, we have an enforcement order for Lot 5 Prospect Street. And this one is a much more successful resolution.
It was, yeah.
Brika, can you just give us the quick background on this one?
Yeah, I did have photos up in Google Drive. It looks like they're not popping up. Anyways, I received a call about some violation to an order of conditions for erosion control. As you know, we've been receiving a significant amount of rain, and Lot 5 and Lot 4 Prospect are actually new single-family homes that are being raised. So they're bringing in a significant amount of fill, and with all the rain and holidays and nobody being around, it has washed out, and the photos are actually pretty extensive and impressive, showing the power that water has. So I went out same day, and enforcement, or well, within 24 hours, Pat signed the enforcement order, and the applicant, within 3 days, installed new erosion controls, double-lined their wattles. They actually tiered off the back of the properties to guide water down, so it's not cutting into the slopes. They pulled all the sediment out of the wetland and water resource areas. So I actually think it was a really positive enforcement order and a really good example of what erosion controls can be. So I am actually seeking for you to ratify it and then close out the enforcement order, so I can send them a letter and let them know that they are off the hook.
It's a great outcome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
good. It was nice.
Nice work.
Yes. Well, the contractor was really nice to work with too. I mean, he was good. He was good.
Jeff, can I have a motion to ratify and close out the enforcement order?
You sure can. So for Lot 5 Prospect Street, I'll give you a motion to both, do you need separate motions, or can we do it in one?
I think it can be a single motion.
Okay, so I'll give you a motion to ratify the enforcement order for Lot 5 Prospect Street, and subsequently a motion to close it out.
Meg Hagan, I second those motions.
Okay, Mark, how do you vote?
Vote to approve.
Michael?
Approve?
Jeff?
Approve.
Meg?
Approve.
Richard?
Approve.
And I vote to approve as well. So Lot 5 is ratified and closed out, and our thanks to them for their cooperation. Just a couple more items for tonight. First up, we have minutes for December 15th. Unless anyone had any comments, can I have a motion to approve those?
Mr. Chairman, a motion to approve the minutes from December 15th, 2022.
Second it.
I second it.
Okay. I'll take Richard's second. Mark, how do you vote?
Vote to approve.
Okay. Michael?
Approve?
Jeff?
Approve.
Meg?
Vote to approve.
Richard?
Approve.
And I approve as well. And then in discussion items, we have one for 160 Grove Street, and then one that I don't think is on our agenda, but for the Manilyn Village project. So we can cover 160 Grove. First, Brika, can you give an update on this one?
Yeah, the applicant is actually here in front of us. So this,
Thank you.
this is a project that was recently before the commission and approved, and they have some field changes that are for a portion of work previously approved outside of conservation jurisdiction. So the entire plan had some buffer zone in there. Now they have some additional field changes that I just thought it would be best that they come present that in front of the commission, so when they do inevitably come for their COC and they have a final as-built plan, nothing is a surprise. As always, though, for any field changes, it is up to your discretion to require them to come back and refile, but I really don't think it's necessary.
Great. Well, if the representative is here, whenever you guys are ready, if you can give just a quick summary of the changes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Commissioners, thank you. Rika, thank you. We're happy to be here tonight. Thank you for the time. With me tonight, I'm an owner's rep. My name is Dave Chaplinsky for Hennup. Also owner's rep, Ben Sprague. For the contractor, Mark Finch. And our engineer, Tom Hillsong from Land Planning, Inc. Bill, I'm sorry. A little bit about my owner. My owner's committed to being a very good member of the community. It's a family business. She wants to be a good steward of the property. We have a unique piece of property. We feel we have a unique piece of property. It was a dump site, which we went through. But also we realized we have wetlands. We have, I'm going to use the wrong term, but it's a watershed or an aquifer that runs through a fair portion of our property. So those are challenges that we've had. And I think that we've overcome them in a good design. And our owner, again, wants to be a very good steward of the property, of the land, over mitigation, those kind of things. We want to be a good member of the community. I think what brings us here tonight is two important points. We started off a building, if I could just show you here on the plan, maybe you remember, maybe you don't, but if this is Grove Street here, there is a building, a rectangle building that we call the head house. And this building was originally an L-shaped. And the building, when I say the building, the actual fabricated building itself was an L-shaped. And in the nook of the building was a greenhouse. It was always a rectangle when filled out, but the building itself was L-shaped with the nook filled in with a greenhouse, and then we'd have greenhouses going out away from Grove Street out towards the back of the property, just to sort of reorientate everybody. In learning our business better and thinking about safety issues, we took the glass greenhouse that was in the nook of the building, that was a very high elevation roof. We originally had 3 tiers of growth in there, but in order to handle 3 tiers of growth, you have to go very high in a lift, man lift. It became what we thought to be a very serious safety violation. So what we did is we infilled the building and put a second floor in that nook. So instead of a very high greenhouse, we took 3 levels of grow, kept 2 on the first floor, moved 1 and another one up on the second floor with an infill. So now the building is truly a rectangle if you go out and see it. No greenhouses enough. So that was one big change that we made. We also, this building was originally 3 stories high. We made it 2 stories high. We shrunk this portion of the building by a floor. In going out the back, what we did is our greenhouses, when we went for approval, were too long. From the center corridor to the back end of the greenhouses, they were too long for what we really wanted to do and give us the best product. We shortened those, so the canopy lessened in the greenhouses. So that sort of takes you to where we are. Another hurdle that we had, we hit COVID. So this was supposed to be a prefab building. We couldn't get it in time. So we made it a structural steel building with a metal cladding, and that's the structure you see today. So that was some hurdles that took up some time. And when we made these changes, we had to submit these drawings to the building department, to planning, and that's what has us in a re-review period. Okay? I think if we were to look outside the building, and our engineer can speak to this, our impervious area has been reduced by about 1,700 square feet. We've added in the back area, so we have more than sufficient parking. So in the back area, we took parking spaces and made a pad for a CO2 tank. That's in the back. In the front, we had to add a handicap ramp, and on the side, we have an access for the basement level or the lower level from stairwells on either side for access. And that's really our major changes outside the building. Stormwater, our engineer can speak to that if necessary. I can leave the reports with you. It's basically changed. So I think that in a nutshell, I think that's basically where we are today. Of course, we will listen to anything and everything, whether they be suggestions, which I've heard earlier today. We're more than willing to do whatever we need to do to be good neighbors. Okay? If there's any questions, we're more than willing to take it.
Great, thank you very much. Brika or members of the commission, any questions?
So what's on the property right now?
Yes, sir. Good question.
Yeah.
We've been at this a while. So in this rectangle, you'll see a metal framed building with a roof and a skin on it. No windows as of yet, but it's all enclosed.
Okay.
All the site work has been rough graded. The asphalt work, the binder work is probably about 60% complete. So the fencing around the whole perimeter has been complete. The curb work, probably about 60% complete. The detention ponds and everything underground for stormwater, completed. Beta's inspected, we have reports. You know, if they bring up anything, we attend to them, we're committed to doing that. So, I don't know what else I could add.
They are in the business of plants.
I get that. Clear.
You're good. So,
Brika, just a quick question. So from your perspective, with the changes to the head house there, that front building, do you have any concerns on stormwater
so
alterations to the?
and this I would go also back to Bill's and Matt Crowley from Beta, our typical engineer from Beta, also reviewed it. So it's two-part, I'm gonna answer. The changes within buffer zone is the CO2 tank that's on previously approved parking space, so there's no net increase of impervious surface there. The total reduction in size is always a plus for impervious surface, and for your bill too.
Yeah, there's a total square footage reduction.
Yeah. For the stormwater system designs, that's the only question that I had, and that's what Matt Crowley mentioned in the Beta review, is that there's no increase to any of the individual stormwater systems on the site. But again, I will caution the commission that stormwater is not under our purview. It is under our purview if it's a system within jurisdiction. So if it's, or something discharging to our jurisdiction, or something that is a significant increase to the adjacent land jurisdiction, which I don't think this is. So, yeah. You can answer that question, otherwise I.
I think the engineer could better answer it. But whether it's in your jurisdiction or not, I'm more than happy to leave you a copy of the amended stormwater report.
Yeah, that'd be nice,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the commission?
None for me.
No further from me, thank you.
None for me.
Nothing for me.
None for me, thanks.
I Brika, agree that I don't think there's anything further that we need to do right now. I appreciate you all coming in and giving us the update. Just keep us posted if there are any other changes that you need us to weigh in on, or that would come before us.
Mr. Chairman, I have to claim ignorance. I don't understand the process moving forward. We're going for a revised building permit. Does this mean that,
So, I'll answer your question.
Thank you.
But first, real quick, looking at this report, it actually looks like the CO2 tank and pad are outside of the 100-foot buffer zone. So I misspoke, and just for the record, I'd like to scratch that out and rewrite that. To answer your question, so, Department of Planning and Building and Engineering, we have the Viewpoint OpenGov permit. So I can sign off on it for the Conservation Department, but you also have to coordinate with Gus, Amy, and
understood? I just want to make sure.
We just haven't had any other feedback or comments.
Oh, I
It
see.
went in the 26th of December, so.
Okay.
But as long as this commission, I'm just asking regarding this commission, do I need to do anything?
No, so you're
Right.
just presenting on any changes, and then I'm a bit of a stickler on keeping them up to date and
Well,
current.
it's perfect.
And
Transparency
transparency in
is
government,
huge.
exactly.
We love
So
it, we
that's-
love it. Thank you very much, Commissioners,
God knows when you don't know.
Mr. Chairman, appreciate it. Rika, thank you.
Thanks for
Yeah,
taking
fine.
the time to give us the
Thank you.
update. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
So the last item that I wanted to touch on tonight relates to the Madeline Village proposal that we had before us, maybe a year and a half ago now. Does that sound right, Brika?
Yeah.
So this was for a proposed housing development off of Peck Street, right adjacent to Fletcher Field. For those of you who were not on the commission at that time, the project essentially involved, or the reason that the primary relief that they were requesting from the commission was permission to relocate an intermittent stream that was on site. And we ultimately denied the permit on the basis that there are not standards established under the Wetland Protection Act for relocating an intermittent stream. And that was based on feedback that we got from Jen Delmore, who was the agent at the time, as well as Lenore White at WSI. The applicant is appealing that to see if they can get DEP to issue a superseding order of conditions, which certainly they have the right to do that. By virtue of filing for a superseding order, they triggered review under MEPA, the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act. A superseding order of conditions is a state permit. And when you have a project requiring a state permit that has environmental justice communities within a certain radius, which this one does, you are into MEPA review. And so there was a recent public meeting on the MEPA application that Mark and myself attended, and there's currently a public comment period on the MEPA application that runs until, I believe, January 23rd. So I wanted to get, Mark, I know you had some questions and feedback based on what you heard at the public hearing, so I wanted to see if you wanted to talk through those points and just generally poll the commission on if this is something that folks have any preference on whether we submit a comment letter in connection with the MEPA application. I personally think that because the MEPA application is directly related to something that's under our jurisdiction, it might be appropriate to submit a comment letter, but want to hear everyone's thoughts.
Yeah, so a couple things I think were interesting, and probably the biggest one was right at the end. So they're taking a, intermittent stream and relocating around the bottom of the property. They put a drainage catch basin, and they've got two other, I can't remember the technical term, catch basins, all kind of focused in this back corner of the lot where the stream will exit. And they had some commentary from the abutting neighbor whose property that stream flows into, right? And there's a lot of water coming out of that right now. So the question became, which I think was a good discussion, and maybe worthy of a recommendation, is they're pumping all this water, or storing all this water in the back corner, right where the outflow is to this existing person's house. So that could develop a problem, or develop into a problem. One of the questions from, I think it was and Pat, maybe you could correct me, the MIPA commissioner, was, you got to look at this as a plan that can accommodate extreme rainfall 30 years from now, right? That was her goal, which is an interesting question, right? I mean, here we're talking about what's going on Prospect Street a couple of nights ago, and multiply that 30 years from now, that could cause a significant issue there. So I think that was reason for concern, and reason for concern for the neighbor. You've also got, oddly enough, these culverts that drain Fletcher Field, the baseball, it abuts the baseball fields, right? So these are all draining into that current intermittent stream right now, and they weren't super clear on how they were going to talk about that or address that. He talked about, I guess running the culverts completely under this development, which is a pretty long extension of where they are now. So I think that is maybe an area of concern. And then you've got some, the addition of some impervious areas, as well as, what's probably going to be road salt, pesticides for maintaining the landscaping in place that's now going to be flowing in this intermittent stream. So those are the three things I thought were a little concerning coming out of the plan they had, particularly the positioning positioning of where all this water is going to end up in one spot from a storage capacity.
Rika, is the lot that yellow that's highlighted there, or is it the
Yes.
little rectangle? Okay.
It's this lot.
Okay.
It was just easier for me to search
Yeah.
for this one than
Yeah.
come here. So this is the intermittent stream.
So,
Existing intermittent stream.
in the amount of time I've been on this commission, I've only seen one project that was outright rejected by this commission, and it was this project. And what we really objected to was their relocation, or their attempt to relocate this stream. And Lorna White was very adamant, against it, and I don't know, we still have her notes on file. I mean, that technically was the reasons why we rejected this. And reading their documents, they talked about this stream that was, the residents were going to walk along this nice stream, and it made it seem like it was a good thing, without stating the fact that was the reason why this whole project was rejected, because it did not meet the standards that we had to go by. So I found that kind of offensive to read that interpretation, in their documentation. I did not go to this last meeting because I think that we lived through like 2 months of hearings on this, and I didn't need to hear any more of it. It'd be a really bad thing, I think, for the town if this does get, approved.
It's an interesting.
Rika, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's an interesting piece of water because it had been fortified at one point, I think was the description, right? Or
Yep.
Armored.
Yep.
Yeah, armored, that was the correct word, with some stones and, potentially set up to drain parts of the town around the early 1900s. So it's an interesting body of water,
Rika, wondering if you had any other kind of technical feedback just from what you heard at the MIPA session. Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's all right. I'm just reading through my scratch here. So it was denied because the original project was denied because there's no performance standard for replicating one bank at all, let alone intermittent streams. So there is no standard under the state. There's no guideline, there's no approved, sanctioned, regulatory, enforceable way to do it. And then, as Pat mentioned, going through this process because of abutting EJ communities, it triggered a MEPA review, and MEPA looks at climate change, they look at climate models, climate resiliency, how that affects EJ populations, down to the WPA wetland science. It's the whole gambit, essentially, and it's a very rigorous process. You are right that in their presentation, looking at Jeff, sorry, you are right, Jeff, in their presentation, there is significant invasive species around the existing stream. Yep, it's already been disturbed, it's already been fortified, armored, right? But there's no but, that's just period, just balancing both sides here. So my comments and parroting off of Jennifer, a few things, Jennifer Hughes, the MEPA reviewer, their latest design for the stream has right angles, so they essentially, I believe it's this, how are they rerouting this? North was not up in their images, but and I don't have their presentation for MEPA review, unfortunately. But they are shifting the stream down and having two right angles. I don't know, I'm sure you know this, but right angles are not very apparent in nature. The circles, you have oxbows, you have flowing curves in nature. So that was a big comment that the MEPA reviewer picked up on, and something that I picked up on as well. So their replication is not is unnatural. To parrot off of Mark, yes, they are proposing to use it as stormwater drainage. So they have flare ends. So that's the riprap. So you have it comes out like a horn, usually on the plans. It looks like, and with a bunch of large stones. If you walk the SNET and you are down by the bridge there, I think that is the Prospect Street Bridge, right? There's a flare end section right there.
Oh,
You
yeah.
go, yep. So that's a flare end. So it slows down water. So water comes out, it discharges, it hits that rocks, it slows down the velocity, and then it just trickles in and infiltrates. So they are proposing to use this stream as a stormwater BMP. Let's see what else. They had an erosion control plan, which I found very interesting, a wetland replication and erosion control plan, I'm sorry, that's what they called it, which outlined all their proposed BMPs, core logs, how they would do this replication, which, it was interesting to see from a creative standpoint, but again, there's no standard to do it, so there would be feasibly projecting into the future, again, talking hypotheticals, but say the commission were to approve it, we would have nothing to fall back on for an order of conditions. We don't have anything on our local bylaw either, so. They are doing as a requirement under MEPA, they have to provide public hearings. So actually today, and I forwarded it to you, all their public hearing information. I also put that in your packets. It's up on the screen. So that is for anybody abutting or interested in the project, just like we do when we have our public hearings to provide public comment, same thing. So you could go for them or go to them. A few other notes. They were proposing a retaining wall. So Jennifer, the MEPA reviewer, mentioned the undercutting of that, especially if we do have a 500-year storm. They would need to get a structural engineer. She was concerned about having a 500-year storm or a surging of water and having that overtop the banks. So there is a lot of technical design comments for that, down to stream elevation, groundwater. Something that I thought of, which is really neither here nor there, but as it does affect abutting properties, you are shifting buffer zones. So it's unknowingly to abutters also putting more jurisdiction on their property. So,
Do you know,
which, by the way, and I sorry, Jeff, real quick, just, to dial that statement back, we don't consider that when we permit single-family homes either, or when we do other restoration. So I don't think it's really fair to bring that up for this MIPA review, but it is something that I had thought of, so relaying that back to you. Go ahead, Jeff.
this all sounds very deja vu. Did they change anything in their plan from what we heard a year and a half ago? Anything major?
I'm not certain on that, and I don't know if I can speak to that. This is a very meaty project, and admittedly, I'm still working my way through it myself. Since it has been under DEP appeals, I've made it a point actually not to get too involved in it. It is in their jurisdiction, it is in their court, and I do not want to get involved in that appeal process. But now that it is coming back to town and affecting, residents, I'm in it. So I can follow up and check on that. I have not seen before the design that they presented at the MIPA.
I believe, I think just procedurally, if they were changing anything in the design, they would probably need to come to us in the first instance for that. I don't think you could use a superseding order.
Yeah. That makes
Right.
sense. Yeah.
So, and Jeff, it looked to me, this isn't scientific, but it looked to be pretty similar, if not exactly the same as what we had previously reviewed.
So, Pat, to get back to your initial question, I think we do need to respond to it.
Are you looking to me? I support, you are the regulating authority for water resources in Franklin. You are a significant stakeholder for this process. And it is in your jurisdiction, and it would be in your jurisdiction. So I encourage you to do that, to take on the leadership role that you have all volunteered to do.
Lauren White has some very strong arguments to reject it. I think we need to revive those arguments and throw it back at them.
And
you'd be
that was
supplementing MIPA, but yeah.
right. That was my thinking as well. And just while we were chatting, I was pulling up their plans. So I'll just share my screen quickly to show everyone who is not familiar with it. Are you guys able to see a PDF up on the screen?
No.
No.
Well, there
Yes.
you go.
There it goes.
Oh, there it is.
Oh,
yeah.
there it is. Yeah, that
Nice.
is.
That's bad.
Yep.
So, and when we're talking about right angles, I mean, so we're coming at a right, right up here, then more right angles here, and then this is the detention pond.
So those flare-in sections are it looks like, someone were talking on a comic in there.
A little bubble.
Yeah, it's okay. Down in the left-hand and the right-hand corner.
So, Brittany, you
triangles.
said you resurrected a lot of the documentation from our initial hearings. Was Lauren White's comments part of that?
I have all of the meeting minutes, all of her letters, other beta comments, plans, draft plans, revised plans, everything in the Google.
I think her letters are probably the most pertinent part of that.
Yep. All the memos are in there, and it's dated and it's in order from earliest to latest.
But that was kind of where I was going to, Jeff. I think, and I hear what Brika is saying as well, that I don't think it's our role to interject ourselves with DEP. But I do think that it's helpful to educate the MIPA office, which is a separate department. And even if our comment letter is as simple as, giving a narrative of how the application was previously before us, that it was denied, and we're attaching to this the memos that were prepared for us by Lenore that were the basis for our denial. And I think that's kind of the extent of what I was thinking. But wanted to get others' thoughts as well.
That sounds good.
No, I concur with what you just said.
So do I. I think it's a good idea.
Okay. So I'll put that together and we'll get that sent into the MIPA office. And we'll continue to follow this. They submitted an environmental notification form. The next step would be to submit a draft environmental impact report. And there will be more information in that and more opportunity to weigh in, if there's anything new that comes out of that.
Rika, so this process is new to me, or Pat, whoever can answer this question. So what happens from here with MIPA? Like, they'll continue their review?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Go ahead, Pat.
Oh, sorry. So the goal of MIPA, it's disclosure. So on projects that trigger certain thresholds that are subject to MIPA, the goal of the statute is to disclose all of the elements of the project. The MIPA office does not require any proponent to do anything. The requirements come from the other agencies that have jurisdiction. And MIPA, their role is kind of to take everything, put it together in a single report, involve all the other agencies. So here that would be DEP. And those agencies are the ones who say, we need you to do X, Y, and Z mitigation. And so MIPA is kind of the hub at the center of all the other state environmental agencies that is coordinating a report on projects that are of a certain scale. The other relevant point as far as MIPA is concerned is that when a project is subject to MIPA, no state agencies can issue a permit for that project until MIPA is concluded. So because this is subject to MIPA, DEP cannot issue a superseding order until they conclude MIPA review. But the goal of MIPA is not to tell a proponent, you must do this or you cannot do this. It's really putting all of the facts and information together in one place and involving all of the different state agencies who either have jurisdiction or are involved in a project.
So what would the end result of the MIPA ruling then be? I mean, so would they be able to supersede anything from the Conservation Committee and move forward, or?
Not MIPA. MIPA would provide recommendations, DEP would pick those recommendations up and either recommend them, like, just as you do, or condition them.
Okay.
It is
Good
in
to know.
DEP appeals right now, however, which means the applicant is disagreeing with the Conservation Commission's decision, and they are looking for a superseding order of conditions, which means they are defaulting to state regulations and those standard conditions. So every time, for example, you approve of a project and you sign these permit forms, at the end, there are already listed predetermined conditions that the DEP mandates for every project. When the commission votes on a project, you can also add additional comments. So Franklin has their standard special conditions. Those are special conditions,
okay.
and then you can add on additional ones. For example, let's just use the rain garden, for example, and say that was required. We can mandate or condition that they plant a certain species of vegetation, so that by the order of conditions, they have to do that. If they don't do that, then they are in violation of the permit. Would you say that's accurate, Pat?
Yep, that sounds right.
Thanks for going through that. That was
You're welcome.
good to know.
I've got a
Permitting is difficult, so sorry.
I've got a technical question. So I know that there's no standards for moving an intermittent stream
Yeah.
in Mass, but are there any BMPs anywhere? Like, does the US EPA have any, or other states that you're aware of, or?
Lauren
Maybe
had brought up to us one example in the state where that had been done.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that was a retail mall, maybe in Burlington. And her point was that we had the option of approving it, but we also definitely had the option of not approving it.
Yeah.
And we went with the latter course, but there was some precedent
Yeah.
where this had been done somewhere else in the state.
I'm just
So-
wondering, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Michael, go ahead.
I mean, I'm just wondering, surely it is being done somewhere, you know?
Intermittent streams are routinely routed underground. There's actually, it might be in Burlington, there is a town in Mass that is infamous within the environmental science demographic that there is a sign on the edge of the road that says, "Here lies X Brook," and it's nothing. That's because they routed it underground. Being snarky, going back to your comment, if the EPA has ever rerouted streams,
Yeah,
yes, that was the name of the game when they
Gotcha.
originally came out. So it has happened, it does happen, but that is why I would pause to take caution.
sure, yeah. I mean,
And that is why intermittent streams are protected by local bylaw. Same thing with isolated wetlands. They still provide, they do provide plenty of ecosystem benefits, stormwater management,
right,
tangible services that do have a monetary value
yeah.
as well.
This one, I think, actually is underground, not far from this lot.
Okay.
Like it flows for a while and then it just disappears.
And then it just disappears, yeah. So that's also when you
I,
get into
I think that's
groundwater
right. I think
slips.
right.
Yeah.
I think when it goes under Peck Street, I believe it's underground.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thanks. Yeah, the reason I'm asking is because, you know, we could use those to say whether or not, maybe we already did this at the time, you know, is the right angle going to work ever, you know? And we were
Right,
just gonna
and
have
we didn't-
overflowing the banks every big storm we get.
We didn't really evaluate the substance of it. And you know, we didn't get to we talked through it, but I think our decision was more based on there are no standards for doing this sort of replication. It's not even allowed. So we can't even have the conversation on, you know, is it done in a way that makes sense? Because it wasn't even allowed.
Sure.
But I agree that we certainly would have gotten to those questions.
Okay, thanks. I
Great.
agree.
So, any other questions or comments on that one?
I just have a comment. So in instances like these, I still operate as a consultant. You know, I'm your consultant. I am your resource. So I do take it to heart, keeping my bias out of it. All humans are fallible. However, to that point, if it would help the commission, I can definitely type up my notes and then send those all to you, and you can use that to frame your letter. If you'd like me to review your letter, I can. Otherwise, I completely support you keeping me out of it and sending it in on yourself, and then just using me as an unbiased resource moving forward. Up to you.
I think I'd like to involve you.
Yeah. I think I'd love to see your notes and have your
Thanks.
input.
Can do.
Agreed. Thanks, Rika.
Yep.
So I think that is our agenda for tonight. So unless anyone has any other questions or items, can take a motion to close.
Michael, motion to close.
Second.
I know I'm going to tell them to bend this up.
Does everyone vote to close? Ayes?
Yes,
All around?
vote to close.
Aye.
To close, aye.
Now tell Owen and Sloan to go to
As Jeff
bed.
would say.
I saw her pop in. I wondered why he went off.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Matt.
We'll see you for at either 6 or 7
Recording
on
stopped.
the 26th.
Perfect. Thanks, Pat.
Take care.
Bye.
Great. Have a good night, everyone.